there were a king and queen who lived together happily and ruled their kingdom well. They had 12 children, and every single one was a boy. One day, the king said to his wife, "You're carrying our 13th child in your womb. If she turns out to be a girl, then the other 12 must die. I want her to inherit the kingdom and all my wealth." And to show her that he meant it, he had 12 coffins made. Each one was filled with wood shavings, and at the head of each one there was a feather pillow and a folded shroud. He had them put in a locked room and gave the key to the queen. "Tell no one about this," he said. The mother sat weeping all day long until her youngest son, who was called Benjamin after the boy in the Bible, asked, "Mother, why are you so sad?" "My dear child," she said, "I can't tell you," but he wasn't satisfied with that answer. He gave her no peace until she unlocked the room and showed him the 12 coffins all in a row, with the wood shavings and the pillows and the folded shrouds. Weeping as she spoke, she said, "My sweet Benjamin, these coffins are for you and your brothers. If this child I'm expecting is a girl, you will all be killed and buried in them." Benjamin embraced her and said, "Don't cry, mother. We'll run away and look after ourselves." "Yes," she said, "that's a good idea. Go out into the forest and find the highest tree you can. Keep watch on the castle tower. If I give birth to a little boy, I'll raise a white flag, but if it's a girl, I'll raise a red one, and then you should escape as fast as you can. May God protect you. I'll get up every night and pray for you all. In winter, I'll pray that you'll always have a fire to warm yourselves at, and in summer, I'll pray that you won't be oppressed by the heat." When she had given them her blessing, the 12 brothers went out into the forest. They took turns to keep watch from a lofty oak tree, and after 11 days had passed, and it was Benjamin's turn, he saw the flutter of a flag being raised, but it wasn't a white flag, it was a red one. He scrambled down the tree and told his brothers. They were furious. "Why should we suffer for the sake of a girl?" they said. "We must take revenge for this. Any girl who crosses our path will regret it. Her red blood will flow." They set off deeper into the forest, and in the deepest, darkest heart of it, they found a little cottage. Sitting outside it, with her suitcase packed, was an old woman. "Here you are at last," she said. "I've kept the cottage clean and warm for you, and I've planted 12 lilies here, outside the window. As long as those lilies bloom, you will be safe. Now, I must be going." And she picked up her suitcase and disappeared down a dark path before they could say a word. "Well, let's live here," they said. "It looks comfortable enough, and she did say it was intended for us. Benjamin, you're the youngest and weakest, so you can stay at home and keep house. The rest of us will hunt for food." So the older brothers went out into the forest every day and shot rabbits, deer, birds, whatever they could eat. They took it home to Benjamin, who cooked it and laid it on the table for them. They spent 10 years in the little cottage, where they were safe, and the time passed quickly. Meanwhile, the little daughter was growing. She turned out to have a kindly heart, a beautiful face, and a golden star on her forehead. One day, when all the laundry had been done at the palace, she saw 12 linen shirts on the line, each one slightly smaller than the next, and said to her mother, Whose are those shirts, Mother? They are too small for Father. The Queen answered with a heavy heart, They belong to your 12 brothers, my dear. I didn't know I had 12 brothers, said the girl. Where are they? Only God knows. They went into the forest, and they might be anywhere now. Come with me, my dear, and I'll tell you all about it. And she took the girl to the locked room and showed her the 12 coffins with the wood shavings and the pillows and the shrouds. These coffins were made for your brothers, she explained, but they ran away before you were born. And she told her how everything had happened. The girl said, Don't cry, Mother. I'll go and look for my brothers. I'm sure I can find them. And she ironed the 12 shirts and packed them neatly and went out into the forest. She walked all day, and in the evening she came to the little cottage. She went inside and found a young boy. He said, Who are you? Where have you come from? He knew she was a princess because of her fine dress, but he was astonished at how beautiful she was and at the golden star on her forehead. I am a princess, she said, and I'm looking for my 12 brothers. I vowed to walk on as far as the sky is blue till I found them. And she showed him the 12 shirts, each one slightly smaller than the next. Benjamin saw at once that this girl was his sister and said, You've found us. I'm your youngest brother, and my name is Benjamin. She wept for joy, and so did he. They kissed and embraced lovingly. Then he remembered what his brothers had vowed and said, Sister dear, I have to warn you. My brothers have sworn that every girl they meet must die, since it was because of a girl that we had to leave our kingdom. She said, I'll willingly give up my life if I can free my brothers from their exile. No, he said, you shan't die. I won't let it happen. Sit under this tub till our brothers come home, and I'll make it all right. So she did. When they came home from hunting at nightfall, they sat down to eat and said to Benjamin, Any news? Don't you know? He said. Know what? You've been in the forest all day long, and I've been here at home, and yet I know more than you do. Know what? Tell us. I'll tell you, he said, as long as you promise that the next girl you meet shall not be killed. By this time they were so curious that they all cried, Yes, we promise. We'll be merciful, just tell us. Then he said, Here is our sister, and lifted up the tub. The princess came out in her royal clothes, looking so lovely, with the golden star on her forehead, and everything about her was delicate and fine and perfect. They all wept with joy and embraced her and kissed her, and they loved her at once. From then on, she stayed at home with Benjamin and helped with the housework. The 11 older brothers went out into the forest every day and shot game, deer and pigeons and wild boar, and the sister and Benjamin prepared it all for the table. They gathered wood for the fire and herbs for the pot, so that supper was always ready. As soon as the others came home, they kept the house in order and swept the floors and made the beds, and the sister always did the washing and hung up their shirts, each one slightly smaller than the next, to dry in the sunshine. one day they had prepared a fine meal, and they were all sitting down to eat, when the sister thought that some parsley would taste very good sprinkled over the stew. So she went outside and gathered a bunch from their little herb garden. And then she saw 12 fine lilies growing by the window, and thought she would please the brothers by bringing them in to decorate the table. But the moment she cut the lilies, the cottage disappeared, and the 12 brothers were changed into 12 ravens that flew away over the trees with a dismal cry and vanished. The poor girl was left standing in the little forest clearing all on her own. She looked around in dismay and saw an old woman standing close by. "My child, what have you done?" said the old woman. "Now your brothers have been changed into 12 ravens, and there's no way of changing them back." "No way at all?" said the girl, trembling. "Well, there is one way," said the old woman, "but it's so difficult that no one could ever do it." Tell me, please," said the girl. "You must remain silent for 7 whole years, neither speaking nor laughing. If you speak a single word, even if it's in the very last minute of the very last day of the very last year, it will all be for nothing, for your brothers will all be killed by that single word." And the old woman hurried off down a dark path before the girl could say another word, but she said in her heart, "I can do it. I know I can do it. I'll redeem my brothers. See if I don't." She chose a tall tree and climbed up high among the branches, where she sat spinning some thread and thinking, "Don't speak, don't laugh." Now it happened that sometimes a king came hunting in that part of the forest. This king had a favorite greyhound, and as they were making their way along a path, the hound suddenly ran to a tree and started barking and jumping up at it. The king followed, and when he saw the princess with the gold star on her forehead, he was so struck by her beauty that he fell in love at once. He called up and asked if she would be his wife. She didn't say a word, but she nodded, and he knew she'd understood. He climbed up the tree to help her down, put her on his horse, and they went home together. The wedding was celebrated with great joy and festivity, but people remarked on the bride's strange silence. Not only did she not speak, she didn't laugh either. However, the marriage was a happy one. But after they had spent some years together, the king's mother began to speak evil of the young queen. She would say to the king, "That wretch you brought home with you, she's no better than a common beggar. Who can tell what wicked things she's thinking of? And she might be a mute, but any decent person can laugh from time to time. Anyone who doesn't laugh has something on their conscience. You can be sure of that." At first, the king didn't want to listen to that sort of talk, but as time went by, the old woman kept on and on, inventing all kinds of evil things to accuse the young queen of, and the king finally began to believe she must be right. The young queen was arraigned before a court packed with the old woman's favorites, and they didn't hesitate to sentence her to death. A great fire was built in the courtyard where she was to be burned to death. The king watched from an upstairs window, tears flowing down his cheeks, for he still loved her dearly. She was tied to the stake, and the red fire was already rising higher and licking at her dress when the last moment of the 7 years passed. And then 12 ravens flew down, the sound of their wing beats filling the courtyard. As soon as their feet touched the ground, they became her brothers again, and they rushed to the fire, kicking the burning logs this way and that, and untied their sister's bonds and brushed off the sparks that were beginning to set her dress alight. They kissed and embraced her, carrying her away from the stake. And as for the young queen, she was laughing and talking as well as ever. The king was amazed. Now that she could speak, she told him why she had been silent so long. He rejoiced to hear she was innocent of all the terrible things his mother had accused her of. But then it was the old woman's turn to be accused, and the court had no difficulty in finding her guilty. She was put into a barrel filled with poisonous snakes and boiling oil, and she didn't last long after that.